Yep. So I'm here with Dawn from my Berks County Election Integrity Group. I've been meeting with you for a few years now, every week, on election integrity in our county in Pennsylvania. So tell me how you got started with politics.
Well, it was at an early age. I turned 18 the year they passed the law that allowed 18-year-olds to vote, and my birthday's in October, so I registered and I was allowed to vote in the November election in 1972. So I was interested, at least in doing what I consider as my civic duty.
A lot of people my age don't know that was that recent. Like we're raised not like taking it for granted as if it's always been 18.
Yeah, well, like I said, I know it because it was nice. It was 1972. I was just starting college, and I'm pretty sure I voted where I went to school. I don't think I came home to vote, which was interesting.
That's nice.
But anyhow,
Convenient.
yeah. Well, again, I would say back in those days, people trusted people more. And again, I would say that maybe it was unfounded trust, but there was a trust factor in the government systems, and the voting systems. And yes, I would say there was probably, what I consider hanky-panky, but from both sides, but not much. Probably more local elections in specific areas. But I'd say generally 99% or and higher of the country, everything was good because you had to show up and you had to show ID. Do you have to show ID? I'm not 100% sure.
I think in Pennsylvania currently it's the first time after you register, but if you're not changing a voting location or anything, then you can just go in without ID.
You just go in, yeah. Although I don't know if that just, excuse me, is more recent or whatever. But anyhow, so I voted in my first election in 1972, and I tried to vote in every election, and as they call them, off-season elections, which I think are just as important because they elect people that are just as important to your life. And I'm pretty sure I voted in most primaries. I can't prove anything, but I tried to vote as much as I could in those days. And I remember growing up, my mom was a poll worker. I'm not sure if she was a majority or a minority inspector, but she worked the polls every election, every primary. So I at least had an example of getting involved in not campaigning, but doing things that should be done and making sure elections are correct. And she did that for many years. I don't know how many years, but many years. So kind of fast forward, I got married, I have a couple kids, and then Donald Trump comes along, and just to get off a tad, I always thought Donald Trump was very good for the Republicans, because the Republicans seem to be always giving in to the Democrats. The Democrats always seem to be bullies, and the Republicans always gave in to them, and Donald Trump didn't do that. And so I thought he was a good guy. I didn't agree with everything he did. I didn't agree with everything he stood for, but I agreed with him in a majority, and he had a way about him that I approved of most times. So anyhow, in 2016, when he ran against and beat Hillary, I heard a little bit of rumblings about some strange things going on, but nothing that really changed the elections. And of course, the Democrats cried that who knows what. I don't know what they were thinking, but that the election was some kind of rigged. But anyhow,
I remember that was the Russia thing.
Oh yeah, the Russian thing. The Russian thing, yes.
Which I think they just recently came out and admitted that was fake. I forget who and where, but it was someone.
Yes.
I think it was someone in the Trump admin who dug up the records.
Personally, they used that to try to unseat a sitting president.
Yep.
To me, that is the definition, or part of the definition, of treason. And I think those people involved, possibly up to the president at that before that, Obama, and a number of other people, should be tried for treason. And I know the penalty is a tough one, but they knowingly, to me, lied. So, although at that time, though, I would talk maybe to my wife and maybe kids or whatever, but I had kids that were growing up, getting ready for college, and happy that Trump won, and thought everything would be fine. And then we hit 2020, and it just seemed like things happened that just didn't seem right. There were people who, I think there were over 200 affidavits saying about different things that went wrong. And to me, an affidavit says, I testify that this is correct or I will go to jail. And none of them went to jail, and none of the court cases ever got light of day. And to me, there just seemed something was wrong there. Either one or the other have to happen. You just can't make them disappear, at least in my mind. I'm not a legal scholar, and heard stories about machine marking ballots, trucks in the middle of the night. I heard one place where they told the Republican poll watchers to go home, and when they were counting them, and the Democrats kept on counting late into the night, and it just seemed like something was wrong. But of course, everything was poo-pooed by the Democrats and our media, which I've learned to distrust 100%.
Yep.
And then we get to the insurrection on January 6th, and the pictures I saw were, yes, there were some people doing not so good things to other people from the Republican side. But to me, the other pictures showed the Capitol Police opening doors and letting people in and leading them around, and the people walking around, looking around like tourists. And I'm thinking, how can this be not a resurrection, an insurrection? If people were just walking around like tourists, there was no guns. It just seemed incredible, and I don't know, and it seemed, the timing of it seemed strange about verifying the election. I've come to understand that some people were going to call in some issues properly through the law, and when this insurrection broke through, it hijacked that process and it never got started again. And like I said, I saw a video of some guy breaking a window and then urging others to go in, but not him. And then some guy showed up and said, I wouldn't go in there if I were you, to the other people. And the guy who broke the window started yelling at him and pushing him and harassing him. So that guy walked away. But I'm still thinking, if you were really wanting to go in and you broke the window, why wouldn't you go in? Unless you're setting people up. So the more information that came out about that, it seemed like there were a narrative that wanted to be played out and told to people that was incorrect. And it looks like now that it's more and more coming out that there are more FBI agents there, and who knows what they were doing. And I don't know, it just seems like that whole election was, as people have said, was rigged. But anyhow, a little bit after that, I met a gentleman at my church that I go to who was starting a group. He called it election integrity groups. He wanted the election to have integrity, I'd be honest. And he talked to me and a number of other people, and I kind of was riled up, and what he was talking about made sense. So I started attending. It just made sense that to make these elections, honest. And my biggest issue is the election, the voter rolls. If you don't have good voter rolls, you can't have a good election. And it seemed like our elected officials at that time weren't as interested in making sure our voter rolls were clean, and people died and was still on, people moved away and was still on, and that just leads to possible. And I'm not saying there was anything that went on in Berks County, but when your voter rolls are, I won't say clogged, but have, I don't know, a couple hundred people who are no longer alive.
Yeah, you would be surprised how wacky that is.
You would say something's not right. Why can't we get these people off? And the excuse, well, there's a process and blah blah. And well, if they moved away, I mean, it's one thing to say, if they moved from Berks County to Schuylkill County, you say, well, maybe since they didn't move out of the state, maybe it might be harder to track them. But if they move to Oklahoma, they're not coming back to vote. And if they do, they shouldn't. But anyhow, so that was kind of work that got me really, really, really focused on the election integrity. And I remember being a poll watcher in 2022, and I went to my local, where I vote, my local precinct, and they were surprised to see somebody. So I guess they had nobody. And they seemed like good, honest people, and they didn't seem to have any troubles. I think one of them had what they call a provisional ballot, and it looked like the judge of election did the right thing and filled it out properly, or helped the gentleman fill it out properly. So I think at least out in more of the away from the main city, things seem to be okay. I don't know 100%, but I've heard rumors and stories that the precincts in Reading are a little more problematical. I don't have any hard data on that, but people who I trust have said it, and they have data on it. So. But the elected officials really didn't want to look into it, which kind of has made me sad about our our government. And the other thing then in 2020, of course, was the mail-in ballots. To me, was just terrible. It just gave people a chance to use this or abuse the system. And even though our ballots or boxes weren't open, 7 by 24/7, they were in county buildings. But we still had people watching them, and we paid for those people to watch them. So I'm thinking it's a cost. Why do we have to have that cost? We have election, have people go on the day of election. It's worked fine for how many years, but they always came up with excuses like, who knows what, who knows, but a lot of excuses. So anyhow, back to Election Integrity Group, we organized into groups to keep an eye on a number of precincts, as many as we could. We got a program to catch irregularities, and the main focus of election integrity was not to get people to vote one way or the other. It was to clean up issues that came up during the election day. If somebody, in fact, I'll tell you, somebody very important to me, my wife, she was at a polling place and somebody came in and they said, "Well, you're dead." Well, that should spark something. Well, they talked to the judge of elections, and they talked and they let him vote. And they gave him a piece of paper to fill out, and she's going first, unfortunately, she didn't get the name, but she was saying they should have filled the paper out before they left to give it to the judge of election. But again, it could have been, a junior and a senior issue, or, it could have been a couple, okay issues. But it's strange enough that they should be trained not just to let them vote. But anyhow, so that's the group's main focus is to get the votes done honestly, and if one side or the other side wins, that's what our country's about. More people vote one side or the other, okay, then we take whoever wins. But so that again, that was our main focus, and I think it's a good focus, and I'm hoping people take us seriously. Unfortunately, after 2020, I think people were riled up. But as things go on, life takes over, and I think more and more people say, "Oh, it's okay now," or "It's better," or "I don't have time," and the participation fades, which is unfortunate, because if you got to be vigilant all the time, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to stay vigilant because people get tired of crying wolf, and really not crying wolf, or just saying, hey, there are things to be done, and we need to do them, and we need to make sure. Just heard about a guy in Iowa, illegal immigrant.
I saw that.
He got voting. He's not a principal, but a
school superintendent.
And it's like, how do you do that? I've heard of somebody's dog voting.
Registered to vote in Maryland for years before he moved to Iowa. Yep.
I heard a story about, I'm not sure what state it was in. I think it was Wisconsin or Michigan. This lady got 3 different ballots legally. She didn't vote them, but she brought them to the proper authorities, and they arrested her for I think for being shown that, bad things can happen, and let's tighten up the laws. But rather than doing that, they arrested her and said, oh, she's a bad person. She got these 3 ballots, legal ballots, so she could have voted 3 times, but she didn't. She just wanted to show how easy it was to do it. So anyhow, I just think there's irregularities.
I think a lot of times these government people use laws as an excuse when they just don't want to look into something and figure out a way to fix it.
Yeah, that's a good. That's good. And again, my opinion is that when I was in a group, and unfortunately I'm not temporarily out because of health issues, but pretty much I think everybody has the same outlook as me, is that we can't solve things in California or Iowa or Michigan. What we can only do is make sure Berks County is doing the right thing, and that the votes, that the people on the voter rolls should be there, totals are counted correctly, and the winners are the winners. And to me, the local officials who are in charge of that should be their aim all the time in doing the vote counting. And to me, at times, our local ones have scrimped. That's not the right word, but have tried to say, oh, it's not our issue. It's the Pennsylvania government has to do it. And I'm thinking, if something's wrong, just change it. Do it yourself, and then work with them. Because I can't change Pennsylvania. I know who my representative is. Okay, but they don't have our local representation from the government has weekly meetings. And again, to me, that's where we should be starting. And they know the state people much better than we do. And the state doesn't have meetings every week or every month, but our locals do, the county people do. And they should be the ones taking this information and pushing it to the state level. But they seem to not do that, but just say, oh, we can't do anything because the state has to do something. Call your state rep. Like I said, I know who my state rep is. I've talked to him a little bit, but not about voter issues, but at least I know who he is. My state senator, I think I know who he is, but he had a meeting a year and a half ago. I went to it, and then it's the last time you get to talk to the guy.
A lot of the state reps, it's easier for them to push the blame off too. Oh, it's the committee. We can't pass this because that's just the way it is. It's hard to get stuff passed. But I think if they really put forth an effort, a lot of this stuff they could.
Yes. And to me, that's what their job really. Unfortunately, what I've heard, well, somebody said, and I believe them, is that the main thrust of almost all elected officials is to get reelected.
Yep.
So they're going to do things that they don't make other people upset with them or upset their local party.
That is the heart of it.
So they're going to just do what they're either told to do, again, not rock the boat, rather than doing the right thing. And I think that is, I don't know, so dishonest. I am so disheartened. And I've seen that in our local officials. They seem, like you said, just push the blame off on somebody else so they don't have to do anything or stick their neck out. But anyhow, I think the voter integrity group is doing very good. I think their aims are very good. We just want honest elections. And I don't know. Again, I don't know how much participation is, but I've seen some stuff about this election. I was involved in past elections where we had people at polls. In fact, if I remember correctly, in 2022, we had over 100 people at polling locations. And in Berks County, there's 202 polling locations, so maybe not quite half. Again, in 2024, I think we had about 80. But I was part of that whole process and keeping an eye on the voting and just making sure things are done correctly. So we could say, yes, we had an honest election. Again, whoever wins, wins. Let's not play games. Let's do the honest thing. And
yep, shouldn't be that complicated.
No, it should not be. And hopefully have the results, election night or shortly thereafter. Count them. To me, they used to do it, and now we can't do it. But we're so much better today than we were, 30 years ago. It doesn't make sense to me why it takes so much longer now. Again, that just leads to questions, and I think they should do things that lead to trust rather than question. And things, may be on the up and up, but when there's questionable things that happen and you ask questions and they don't want to give you answers, it just leaves you with a wondering, what's going on and is this really the right thing to do? And so anyhow, like I said, I've had some health issues in the last 6 months or so. So I kind of dropped out, got a bypass selection, but been thinking about getting involved again just because I'm feeling somewhat better and probably do me some good to get involved again.
The core people in our group have been pretty dedicated.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Well, I appreciate talking to you.
Sure.
I hope you feel better.
Yeah, well, thanks. I hope this helps you. I don't know.
Yeah, it does.